Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about alignment or awareness of our crown. This checkpoint, more so than the other checkpoints, really depends on all the previous ones. So if you don't have good body structure, if you don't have good flow, if you don't have good power, all of that stuff is going to affect how you can actually effectively use the crown of your head. So one way I want you to be aware of the crown, so when I'm talking about the crown, I'm kind of talking about like the swirly origins on your scalp, generally speaking. The first thing is not going to be super useful yet, but it's going to be part of a bigger picture, is going to be just the stature of your body. If it's not aligned, right, so if it's like tilted one way or the other, so for example, if you ever try to run around in circles with your head tilted to the side or something like that, any change in that kind of changes the way like your natural gyroscope kind of behaves, right? So by having everything being nice and centered, again, crown of the head being very tall, that's going to make it easier for you to kind of have a very stable sense of your surroundings. Additionally, this in conjunction with what we're talking about with the chin, right, or the throat, is that in conjunction with the chin being a little more tucked in, is also going to give you better posture in general. However, this is a sword channel, so those are all good things in general. So how does it actually affect how we use a sword? Assuming everything is in alignment, when we do turns or spins or even just pivots in order to swing a sword a little more effectively, the more perfectly aligned everything is, the more efficient and the less potentially bad it could be for you, right? So for example, doing a simple example, kind of making it even a little more extreme in the future, if we just do a basic diagonal cut, right? So let's just say I'm starting off with my sword over my shoulder. I could be doing like a full, Queen's Guard. I can do whatever really. I can prepare for that diagonal cut. And noticing that my shoulder is facing forward and my crown, again, is just kind of like the very top of this top. As in like top, as in like a spinning top, right? So if things are generally where they're supposed to be, I can easily pivot around that axis for a little bit more of a consistent cut. It's not necessarily going to give you a powerful cut, but it's going to give you consistency so that you can actually see what is working and what's not. As opposed to, if I try to do that same thing with my head like tilted this way, I'm going to be kind of going off maybe in the weird direction. Maybe I'm going to overcompensate and maybe go up a little more forward. Things are going to be less consistent. So the major thing with a lot of martial arts is consistency more than ups and downs of power and skill. So yes, there will be fluctuations in power and skill, but if you have a very consistent basis, so whether that's training regularly, whether that's moving your body in a fairly regular way, you'll be able to know when something is off and when something is working and when something's not working. So by having a very consistent place for your crown, so for me, it would be just right above where normally would be. So like the spine being completely straight, and I'm here, and I do a nice little pivot, and I cut. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of a bend just because I'm leaning slightly forward. I kind of want to still look them in the eye, so it is going to be a little bit of a bend. But all of this is adding to a level of consistency to your training. This becomes more obvious the more we spin. So obviously in an actual fight, don't spin, please, just because you're going to get hit in the back of the head so quickly that you won't know that you were hit in the back of the head, right? So, but in forms we do it, partially in terms of balance, but also just footwork and stuff like that. So for example, in Form 9, we have this big old clear before we do something else, right? So let's do it first. Actually, as I sort of did already, generally speaking, everything is in alignment, right? So if I'm here, and I'm, again, kind of aligned this way, I'm not leaning forward too much, I'm not leaning back too much, I'm kind of nicely settled here, and I drive my foot back in order to get a little more power with that cut. Things are consistent. However, and I'm going to see if this is going to really negatively affect how I work, if I'm here, let's first start off with just going forward here. A little bit off balance here, just because there's a little more mass over my knee, over my position of spinning. So that axis is no longer very consistent. Right now it's kind of like twisting. Likewise, if I'm leaning backwards, I don't think I'll be able to do this effectively, but leaning backwards away from the move, I have no sensation of where I'm facing. So by having everything kind of nice and aligned, I'm going to use the word consistent because we're going to change that up in a little bit. It's going to be effective. Does that mean the crown is always tippy-top like that? In the sense that, you know, going straight from the tailbone all the way up, pretty much as straight as we can make it. Is that what I always recommend? As you can tell, because I'm using strong language like always and must and stuff like that, no. There's always going to be counterexamples. So the biggest thing is going to be our consistency. So knowing where that crown is relative to the rest of your body. The counterexample that I like to use is in boxing. So the main thing that we usually teach in terms of like fighting in that way is keeping your head a little more tilted forward. Again, so your shoulders can kind of protect your jaw a little bit more. The tilt also activates the sides, the backs of your neck, so it kind of like reinforces the skull a little bit more. So if it does get knocked up a little bit, it's not as bad as I suppose I'm kind of like here and just get knocked sideways. It can easily snap a neck, right? So that is a better position for what we're trying to do there. However, I can still be consistent with it. So knowing where that crown is, if I always know where that crown is relative to how I'm moving, that's good. So again, that adds a level of consistency. So not necessarily always being in the same place in all moves that you always do, because we do lean forward, for example, in some of our teirosei kind of strikes, right? Noticing my head's still kind of a little bit upright, but there are times where it's going to be not doing that. However, if we're consistent in the way that we do it every single time, relative to the move, we're good. Another aspect, one that's a little bit harder to nail down, but I think by focusing on the crown, it kind of expands it a little bit. So we talked about last time the idea of prudence, or to a lesser degree, metsuke. Metsuke being our ability to perceive everything around us, or at least the best that we can. By focusing on the crown of your head, it sort of expands it a little bit more. If you're already working with metsuke, the focus of your crown is also going to help expand it, no longer in the visual area, but also just kind of like to get a little bit woo-woo, like a little bit of the vibey stuff, right? So if something really weird is going on here, again, maybe like the hair on the back of your head is a little bit, on end, you can be able to perceive that maybe a little bit better. So I found by focusing on the crown of your head when you're trying to perceive things, not necessarily directly in front of you, but in general, that's been pretty helpful. But I always like to have drills, right? So the first drill is simply go through a combination or form first normally. So just be aware of where your crown is, generally where it normally is going to be. If you're boxing, a little more forward. If you're doing most sword-y things, it's usually kind of more upright. Depends if you're wearing like a face shield and stuff like that, or a face mask. Things can also change that, but doing it normally. So for example, if we're doing like a little combination here, if I'm kind of fight someone here, maybe I'll do a nice little broadside into their wrist strike, into a fenestra guard, maybe do a little bit of a switch, kind of just see how I naturally move, how smoothly I can move, even trying to do like the opposite kind of technique, kind of seeing what's up. Then do the same thing with your head, here, forward. If you want to go backwards, you can. Just know your feedback is going to be, first of all, immediate because you won't be able to see anything, but also you'll feel so incredibly weird, but also it's not going to be helpful because you're not going to be able to see what's really going on, and also it's not going to be comfortable. So try that same combination, head tilted, maybe do a little bit of this, right? Maybe a little bit of this. This is a really weird one on that side. But you're going to notice that the more complicated you make it, obviously, the more you're going to be depending on normalcy. So for example, if we take a spinning cut, I'm not going to do the full form because I can get in trouble, but from 4, if we do an uppercut, diagonal, diagonal. Okay. So normally, with a head kind of, again, kind of structured as such, not too heckin' bad. That last part is more of a footwork problem for me personally, but let's try it one way or another, right? So let's try head down. This is going to be actually a very common problem that I see in spins for a lot of practitioners, where they're actually leaning forward, or their eye level is a little bit lower than the target eye. But for here, head low. Whoop, almost spun through. But as you can tell, it greatly diminishes your ability to move and cut effectively. Because first of all, it breaks your consistency, and it also just breaks the center of balance that you've worked so hard to get used to. But with that, so hopefully you enjoy the journey going up through the body, finding these little nodes that we really focus on to really hone our fighting ability, our ability to move, our ability to perceive things, and generally making us a better swordsman. So you can probably imagine, like, okay, like crown of the head, we're not going to get much higher than that, I'm sure, so there's going to be no more videos on that. We'll see. So we'll see if there's going to be a little more. There's always more places to focus. I won't give you like too many because then you're focused on everything as opposed to a few things that will be very crucial. In the near future, we're actually going to be doing something kind of fun, a little bit different from what I've been doing, but I'll keep you guys posted. We're going to have a fun video hopefully next time. We always have a fun video, but hopefully next time is going to be a little bit different. But yeah. But with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training.